Okay, greetings class. In this episode, in this recording, we'll be doing 5G, Project 5G. We're first going to get the student files. This is on page 394 and 395 in your textbook. You're going to click on chapter 5. You're going to save as and save it to your desktop so you know where it is. You're going to download the student files. And there it is. Once it's on my desktop, I'm going to go ahead and move the 5G advertising options database out to the desktop. Then I'm going to go ahead and open up that database. Okay, so I'm going to enable the content. It always wants us to save the database as last name, first name, and I think it usually tells us to take off that AOG, so we're going to do last name, first name, 5G, right? And then we're going to enable the content, and we're going to change these tables. We're going to rename them to do our last name and first name, just like every other one. Okay, and doing all that is the end of our step 1. Okay, class, for the next step, we're going to be doing step 2, 3, and 4. Here is all combined. We need to create a query in design view. So let's go ahead and create a query. I'm going to create query in design view. It's going to need both tables. So we'll just shift click both. So I held the shift key down and I clicked them both. I added them. And then I'm going to close that. So both tables are there. The common key 1-to-1 is the category code. The relationship there is 1-to-1. And it wants us to add the category field from one table. And that's the category table. So we need to go down and find that. It's unfortunate that this doesn't really stretch out, so you can't really see it. So I just click and make sure that that's in. So the table that we're looking for is the category table, right? And you can select the table and that'll limit the options as well, right? So then we can see it better. All right, now it wants us from the other table, it wants us to do type, budget amount, design fee, and that's it. We'll go ahead and get those going. So I'm going to select the other table, which is the advertising table. So all my selections now are there, right? So I'm going to select type. I'm going to select the table to limit that field, right? It's the advertising table. It wants us to do budget amount, design fee, so I'm going to select the table first, and then I can see those clear design fee. Let's do one and production fee. We're going to select the table first, the advertising table. I'm going to select production fee. So that was pretty much all of step 2. To add those fields in that order. Step 3 says in a blank field, we're going to add some type of equation here. So usually what I do is I try to type down that equation as it pertains in the book so that I could just copy that equation and put it in there. So it's telling us to add a field here. Right, it wants us to add that cost. And then it wants us to add the another variable as well, which is variance. So I've also typed that down. I got it out of the book. It was word for word, right? It says variance equals the cost minus the budget. The items in brackets are the items that are already presented in the table itself. So those are fields it's pulling from. Like as you can see, there's a design fee, so that's in brackets. That's the design fee there. The production fee, right? That's in brackets, so it's a category in the table that's already there, right there. So we're going to do that last one here, variance. We're just going to copy and paste it there. I just click out of it to make sure it did the correct thing. So that's all of step 3. Now it wants us to run the query, then save the query as last name, first name, budget analysis. We're going to go up here, right? We're in design. We're going to click run. The query does run. We're going to go ahead and save that query. All right. We just close out. It'll ask us, do we want to save it? If we want to save it last name, first name, and I believe it says to save it as 5G budget analysis. 5G budget analysis. So click OK. So that was steps 2, 3, and 4. I'll move on to step 5. Okay, in this step, we're going to do, like I said, steps 5 and 6. And so we have to create a new query. So we're going to go ahead and go to create. We're going to create a new query in design view. We want to use both the tables. So we're going to add both the tables. And that one I just clicked and dragged my mouse to get them both. I held the left click down while I was doing that. When I added them, I click OK. And so the first thing we do is select the table, right? It wants us to add the category field from the category table, and then it wants us to add the objective field from the advertising table and the budget amount from the advertising table. So I select the tables first, objective, right? And then it wants us to add the budget amount. Now what it's telling us to do, or what it's asking us to do, is to go up here to the show hide, and it wants us to show the totals, right? When we click that, we get a total, and this is called the design grid, in this design grid area, and it wants us to change the budget amount total by sum. So we simply click that down to sum, and next it asks us to run the query, right? We ran the query. We're going to go ahead and we're going to save it as last name, first name, oops. And I think it wants us to save it as a budget by category and objective. Okay. Okay, for the next step, we're going to go to step 7. We're going to create a cross-tab query. So I'm just going to close out these other queries. So we're at the same starting point. I just had some open. I'm going to create a cross-tab query. It says using the query wizard. It says to select a, we're going to do a cross-tab query. Okay. It asks us to use a query. So we're going to select a query. And I believe it was the budget analysis query. So we're going to select next, right? So we want to do the crosstab query, not off a table, but off another query. And it asks us to use the following categories. For row headings, we're going to use type. So you see that's row headings, so we're using type. Click next. For the column headings, it wants us to use, I believe it's, let me just review that here. For the column headings, use category. We're going to use category. I did not add that, so I'm going to go ahead and add that. And then for the calculated field, we're going to use cost. And sum function. It wants us to name the query last name, first name. It says crosstab query, so we're going to take out this budget analysis. Crosstab query. Finish. So this is our crosstab query. I'm going to just quickly look at design view. It looks like there's an extra field here. We don't need the total of cost. You can keep that in there. That's fine with me, or you can delete it by just right-clicking on the whole entire thing or clearing out these fields. I'm okay with leaving that total of cost query in there. Or that field in there. That's fine with me. Okay, so that was steps 7, 8, and 9. Okay, we're going to move on to step 9. Really, it's just a print preview, and I don't need you to print anything. I'm going to close out these additional queries. I'm going to move on to the next query. We're going to create a query in design view. We're going to use both tables, so I'm just going to click and drag on both. Close. And what we're going to do here is we're going to use the field, it looks like, well, pick the table first, right? We're going to use both tables, so we're going to use the advertising table first, advertisements table first. I'm going to go to, I believe it's budget amount. Let me just verify that. Yep, budget amount field. And then on the next one, we're going to use the category field. So we're going to use budget amount and category. Remember, I picked the tables first, so that selection is easy. And now what it wants us to do is it wants us to click a query type update. So I'm in the design query tools. Design query tools. I go to the query type. Wants us to click update. You see that I did add a tab here that says update to, and it wants us to update the row under budget amount, and it wants us to use the formula budget amount is times 1.15. So I typed that out. Remember that if it's in the field, it's in brackets, right? We're using a field. All right, so I'm just going to copy that budget amount times 1.15. And I'm going to paste it in that update to category, right? That update to appeared when I selected this query type update to. It wants us to run the query, so we'll go ahead and run the query. It tells us that we just click yes if it wants to update, the first several rows. I'm going to click yes. It went ahead and updated those rows. So we're going to go ahead and run the query. We're going to close the query. We're going to as always, last name, first name, 5G update, electronics budget. And so actually what I did in this update query, I still need to modify it, right? Because it's asking me for 12 rows and I'm supposed to do the category. So let's go ahead and fix that. The category. And I think it's electronics. So let me just verify. Yeah, sorry about that, folks. It's supposed to be electronics. That's probably why it says in the book that we need only 5 rows and I updated 12, right? Because I updated too many. And I think it's in the criteria. So now let's see what happens when we run that, right? 0 rows. So I've spelt something wrong or done something wrong. So let's go ahead and check on what I've done wrong. So this should be a good drill for you to also troubleshoot your queries when you do something wrong. So I think the problem is I added an S and the field is electronic and then non-electronics. So when I ran the query, it couldn't find the electronics field. So I'm going to take out that S and let's see if we fixed it. Right. Now we're updating 5 rows. So that shows you the importance of the exact information you need to add. Because what happened is it tried to, first I ran it against the whole entire table, which pulled up 12 records. The book's telling us it should only update 5 rows, and I'm updating 12 rows. So then I added the criteria of electronics, which is not in there. So then it updated 0 rows. So that's a way to check your work. We're going to go ahead and close the query. We'll update it. Now we could updating the 5 rows, and that's all that's doing is updating rows. Go ahead and click on that. Now I should see a budget amount there. So that's just actually adding or updating the tables, right? So every time I click this and run this, it's updating the budget times 1.15. So then my information in the budget analysis will be different, right? I'm going to continue to add to the sum of the budget every time I run this query. So 5 rows every single time I run that. Okay, folks, that concludes the project. I'm out of time. Thanks.